Hello world, my name is Rayton Zemiri, and I come in front of you as a member of the human race who inhabit this planet called planet Earth. I come to you with a very big problem which has caused my children to be taken away from me by institutionalized racism, which cannot be seen by a naked eye up until you listen to my entire presentation and learn the actual definition of racism as opposed to the definitions that different individuals have depending on their own intuition. My children were taken away from me by the City Council of Swansea in the United Kingdom and all its agencies. The City Council of Swansea has got so many agencies who operate as subcontractors. So there is no inspection or supervision to check each agency. Okay, let's say nobody is instituted to check each institution whether what they are doing is clean or corrupt. What it is that if an agency acts against you in Swansea, what the agency has put on book is exactly what the City Council of Swansea accepts, and that is exactly what the law of the United Kingdom accepts. What is actually missing is a supervisor or an overall supervisor who goes on to investigate each and every atomic input of what informs such an institution to take the decision it takes. In my case, the only answer I can give is racism. As you can see, I am black. I was born black in a country called Rhodesia in 1969, which later became Zimbabwe in 1980. And to be a bit abstract, I would need to give you a background of what colonialism is, its effects, how it informed my way of doing things, how it informed my way of thinking, how it informed my sense of correctness, and what happened which ended me up here in Swansea to end up having 3 children here in Swansea, a 10-year-old girl, a 6-year-old boy, and a 4-year-old girl. Today on the 5th of August 2019. I also have a boy in Zimbabwe who is 21 years old, so I am quite an old man, a 50-year-old man. The problem I am facing here is cultural difference between me and all the institutions of Swansea which operate uninspected. If an inspector is instituted, The inspector will be white, to inspect the work that has been done by white people in their belief and their culture of the value of correctness in the white culture of the English, of the Welsh, of the Scottish, and of the Irish. Let me tell you the truth. The white culture is very good and emulatable. I do emulate a lot from white culture. It is actually a leader in civilization. I do not dispute that. But those gaps which are missing, where an African father is expected to walk into the city of Swansea and automatically get evolved into a white man. If you walk into Swansea as a black man who has been intrusioned by black culture, which has been sustained for millions of years in Africa, once you walk into Swansea, all the laws expect you to behave like a white person. You have to behave like an English, like a Scottish, like an Irish, and like a Welsh. That's how you must behave. You shouldn't even be talking the way I am talking, because they don't talk like this. They talk nice, humble, and quiet. I understand that. But to be honest, I can't do that. I can't even imitate that, because I was brought up and institutioned by African environment. I did not invent that. I did not choose to be born in Zimbabwe. I did not choose to be born under colonialism. I did not choose to be born African. It happened. I was born there. It was not my choice. So there are certain intuitions which happened and inform my DNA, my way of speaking, my way of doing things, which are entirely as a result of my intuition as an African. The actual reason why I am here in Swansea is the residual impact of colonialism, which made my country Zimbabwe what it is today, uninhabitable to me, and actually very uninhabitable, which is the reason why I left Zimbabwe in 1989 and went to South Africa for 11 years and ended up coming here to Britain ever since the year 2000, April 2000. When I came to Swansea, I was around 38 years old, 38, 39, somewhere there. I was working under a company called Carillion, which was a construction company, and I was working as an operative for that company. We built the UWI University students accommodation at the University of West England. Then when that project was finished, I was posted to go and build the magistrates courts in Bristol again. When that job got finished, I was posted to Swansea to come and build the Meridian Tower, which is one of the tallest towers by the seaside in Swansea. While working there, I met my partner, with whom I have 3 children today. I am not going to mention the name of my partner here because, to be honest, it will be unfair for her, it will be unfair for my children as well, and I'm not going to mention the names of my children. It is just going to be myself narrating my story. We lived with my partner a very good life for 11 years. But for everybody, black or white, who is married, we're living as partners. We were not married because marriage needed to go to Africa first to get the 2 families together and then get married. We couldn't do that because of financial and other difficulties. Right. Every family, white or black or Asian or whatever it is, when people have lived together for 11 years, it is impossible not to find something that is a bit different from what it was 11 years ago when we first met. I met my partner from a Christian atmosphere. Actually, we were going to Bristol because we live in Swansea. I was going to go to Bristol to attend a church service there. Where at one point in March 2008. Then a friend that I had just met in church in Swansea had asked me if I could take him to a church in Bristol because he just wanted a different environment. The friend is from Zambia. So I waited for that guy to come in the morning, one morning, and the guy came with his own friend. Then he introduced the friend to me, and it was a girl. Then we went to Bristol together, had a good church service. From there we went to KFC, and we had a meal there. This friend of mine was a married man. So this girl with whom we had come as a friend was just a friend. You know, people in church, you when somebody says it's a friend, it is a friend in church. So when we were driving back home, I was talking. We were in my car. Then I was talking to both of them. Then the girl told me that she was single, and actually she was in a situation in which I was. Having looked at her as a church member, so that I don't want to mention a lot of things here, she matched everything that I needed as somebody to become a wife to be. Then we spoke in the car and we arranged to meet again. Then we phoned each other after that, and we met with this girl who later on became my partner. Everything happened as normal as you can imagine. Then we started a family, and we had a child born, let me say, 10 months after we had met. Then we moved I had to move from my house and move into her council house. When the child was born, we were given a bigger council house, which was a 2-bedroom one. Then we moved to that council house. Then we began to raise our children. Then we agreed to start university. My partner was already on a course, on a college course, access to university. Then I joined her in university. Then both of us started. She was studying accounting and I was studying mechanical and manufacturing engineering. I graduated in 2014 and she graduated in 2013. Just before her graduation, we had another boy again born, and so it was then 4 of us in a family. Then after finishing university, we had another girl again born, so it was 5 of us in the family. Then the council gave us a bigger accommodation. We moved to that bigger accommodation. What actually happens here with the council is, which I did not know at that time, they are supposed to put both our names on the claim. but because of their past experiences and because of their knowledge and because of their preparation for a future, they did not put my name on the claim. And we were not actually, let me say, I was not asked whether I wanted my name to be put on the claim or not, and I did not know. I didn't even know the value of it up until a problem began. But the council knew, because it has done this to so many people. So many people have gone into my situation because of this thing of not having your name on the council claim where you live for 11 years. You see, the claim was on my partner, and I was not put there. Was just a man there, not knowing that it would become a very colossal problem that would destroy my family to the state it is today. So in 2014, we began to notice something not very regular with our son, who was born in 2012. Then upon inquiry, we were told that our son is autistic. He's got autism. So we didn't quite understand what autism means, but we went for lessons to be taught, and we did a lot of research to understand what it means and what the implications are. And you know, all the plans of your life do change if you've got something unexpected which has changed your life. Then all of a sudden, again in 2014, we did notice something different about our youngest girl. She also was autistic. Our first girl was not autistic. She's not autistic. She's all right, doing very well. But these two other children, the second one and the third one, are autistic. As you know, this is not by choice. It is things that do happen. We faced this autism with difficulty because the Council of Swansea did not quite put our children in the level in which they are. First of all, they said their autism is mild, because the autism seems to have 3 stages: mild, medium, and the highest level of autism. Because we didn't know anything about autism, we took him to school, and the school wanted to put him in a normal class with the normal children. And we did tell them straight away that on a normal class is not going to work, because we know our son from the house is going to be very difficult. And then he was put in a special unit right from the beginning of his school program. He was put in a special unit for autistic children. Then we did find a lot of problems again with the council being in denial that our son was in the highest level of autism. The school followed the paperwork. The paperwork said mild. The reality on the ground said highest. It was clear, because the school told us that they have never actually met one child who was as high in autism as our son. Then we had problems with that, with the educational psychologist insisting, because it involves a lot of money which also must come from the council. The educational psychologist suggested that he had preliminarily suggested that the son was alright in that school. So he was, after facing a lot of problems with the school and the way because the child kept on falling, I used to be called sometimes 3 times a week to come and pick him up from school because he had fallen. 3 times a week. Imagine sometimes 2 times a week having to, you drop him, then they call you to say, come and pick him up. Then that was the case until he was transferred to another special school again, but which is not the actual specialist unit in which he should be. Then in this school, the new one, the teachers and the headmistress also found it difficult to sustain our son there, and they called us for a meeting and told us the best thing was to apply for a specialist school which is available here in Swansea, and if our son is transferred there, he's going to gain more education, because at this school, the second school in which he was just coming to disturb other children, because he does not do what a school child should do. He jumps all over and eats the wall and rips up things and disturbs other children when they are learning. So we were called for this meeting and told to apply for our child to be taken to a better specialist school. We did consult the education psychologist, who insisted that no, our son was all right in that school. On a second year, we were called again by this school to be told again that our son was not gaining anything in terms of education from this school, anything. Then we told the child psychologist again. Then she said, no, our son is all right in that school. For the third time again, the teacher and the headmistress called us for those regular meetings, and we were told that we had to do more because our child was not gaining anything education-wise from this school. I, this time, had to write a letter to the education psychologist in her office, giving her all the details, mentioning that the teachers have raised concern that they are not giving our child the adequate education because of his nature of high autistic spectrum. The educational psychologist wrote me back to say she had sat down with a panel of advisors, and they had concluded that my son was all right in that school. Then I wrote back the educational psychologist, this time putting a little bit of pressure and showing a little bit of seriousness. And I asked this child psychologist to explain to me who the people in the panel were who made a decision to keep my child in that school, and what methodology they used, and what level of education they have. Because you see, in reality, these people are paid from the taxpayers' money to do what the government needs to do for these autistic children. If you keep quiet as a parent, the most likely probability is that your child is going to spend all the time learning nothing from that school, with a child psychologist claiming that the child is all right in that school, and yet empirically the people who are dealing with your child do have a different version of it. So this letter of mine angered the child psychologist. Remember, the child psychologist is an agent for the city council. She is one of the agencies of the city council of Swansea. By challenging her, which you should as a parent, you should, otherwise your children, well, if you don't challenge these things, your children will get the least of everything. After challenging that, the child psychologist obviously became angry and wrote me a letter to say, yes, all of us are qualified. We sat in this panel and concluded that your child is right in that school, and all of us are qualified to give that verdict. Right? because that had become a problem, having challenged the agencies which are attached to the City Council of Swansea. Little did I know that I had started a Pandora box. We were called by a doctor, and we were told to go and sit at another panel which would educate us about how to raise autistic children. This panel is called the Facing the Challenge. They are actually part of the NHS, but they are contracted to the City Council of Swansea. They work together. You know, the City Council works with all the agencies, the fire, the police, the women organizations, the social services. It's all interwoven. They work together. As an individual, if you get a problem with any of the subcontractors of these agencies which are interwoven into the City Council of Swansea, as with your little mouth, you have got no room at all to challenge and say your version of the story. I have gone every way to try and get this issue resolved. All the doors are locked. You are given very little time to say anything. Nobody listens. You go out. That's it. The decision they have made is a decision of God. That's exactly how it is. It is the decision by which the government and the laws of this country will abide by. And there is no supervision to check all these people and check exactly how they do their job and check where they miss the facts. Nobody is doing that. Nobody at all is interested in doing that. When they take a decision, they implement it and they use their agencies, including the police. You get arrested and you are gone. That's all. So at this meeting, which was Facing the Challenge, we were supposed to attend 8 sessions, and they happen every Tuesday. They happen every Tuesday. Little did I know that the anger of the child psychologist had been, let me say, communicated with all the agencies, and I obviously had been earmarked and described in the council and its agencies as a violent person who challenges authority and all that. When I was graduating in university in 2016, after finishing my master's degree in industrial design, the Vice Chancellor told us that we must question everything in this world. The civilization, okay, in order for civilization to perfect itself, because civilization is an ongoing thing, but for civilization to perfect itself, it gets its input from people who are able to question and challenge things. He who does not want to be questioned and challenged keeps the status quo and stops the wheels of civilization. There are so many things that were happening in 1950s which are no longer happening now because people challenged them. Be it women organization, because women were not recognized everywhere in the world, including here in Britain. They were not up until they stood up and fought it. Would it be racism the way it was in 1912 in this country? It's different now from 2019 because the people challenged it. This also has to be challenged. The government must find a way to find a supervisor who checks each and every agency who are contracted to the City Council of Swansea to see if they do not do their job in a corrupt way, because they do it corruptly, and then they do it with a racism. They will never find out about racism if the person who does racism is white and the person who is instituted to check whether there is racism or not is white, is institutioned by white thinking, and does not know anything different. For me, as a black father living in Swansea, I do see racism institutionalized, especially the state in which my family is now. My children were taken by a creation of a lie, which was done by, which was perpetuated and honed and directed and stage managed by my partner, being directed by this facing the challenge. The result they wanted to produce was a result where my partner would be taken and I would not have any window to consult her, to see my children, to say anything, because there's something already that was that is in place, which is called domestic violence. Once they use the word domestic violence, there is no way you can contact the courts, the member of parliament, the ombudsman, let me say the local authority ombudsman, or the lawyers. You have no way of consulting them unless you have got a lot of money. If you don't have the money and you are poor and black like me, if they take a decision whether it's based on truth or it's based on lies, it does not matter. In my case, when my children and my partner were taken, nobody has ever asked me a question to check whether what my partner told them was true or false. Even though if there was to be someone to go to, that person would be white, would not be African, would not understand the African way of running a family. He would not at all understand the African way of running a family. Let me stop here a little bit and tell you exactly what I mean about African way of running a family. That is where the word racism comes from. Let me give you the definition of racism. In the dictionary, racism is described as someone who believes that his culture is more superior to the culture of another human being. Let me repeat again so that it really gets, because this is very important and quintessential and needs to be addressed by all the institutions, including the government of this country. Because once they miss out that point, black people will find it difficult to raise families in places like this. Racism is a philosophy whereby someone believes that his culture is more superior than the culture of another person. I did not create this definition. This is an ubiquitous, universal definition of racism. You cannot deviate from it. Racism, again I'll repeat for the third time, is when someone believes that his culture is more superior than the culture of someone else. This is exactly what happened to me. My wife was told by Facing the Challenge advisors that my way of running my family in Swansea as a black man, obviously as a black man, is actually not right. I can go on and say it is same as saying that my black culture is less superior than the white culture. That's racism. The way I run my family as a father in Swansea is not right. I should run my family like an Englishman or like a Welshman or like an Irishman. If I run my family as a black man, a black entusiast man, a man who was raised in Africa, a man who grew up in Africa, a man who has an African father, and a man who has African grandfathers, a man who has African ancestry, and I try to practice my Africanness way of raising children here in Swansea, it's not acceptable and it is punishable by police and by law. That's a bit racist. That is racist. That is the definition of racism. That is what it means to say black culture is less superior than white culture. Let me tell you, the reason why black people are found on planet Earth is because for trillions and trillions of years, ever since the Big Bang happened, the black man has been able to sustain his family. He had a method to sustain his family. Not going very far, because I can't tell you what happened 400,000 years ago when fire was discovered. I can't tell you there. Nobody has the nitty details. But I can tell you from 1888, when the Berlin Conference was instituted in Europe, where European countries decided to go and divide Africa into paddocks and share it among themselves and take control of people there and their cultures and take over their daily way of running their own lives. That was 1888 when the Berlin Conference happened. My ancestors, actually my grandfather, because my father was born 1898, my grandfather was obviously in his teenage years. My father's father, was obviously in his teenage years in 1888. Repeat again, my father was born in 1898. I'm 50 years this year. That's why you must understand what African means, because no one in Swansea, very few people in Swansea will say my father was born 1898 and I'm 50 years old. See, that's why you must see the difference between African and European. See, when I was born, my father was 71 years old. My mother was 22. Okay, she had turned 23. I was 23 years old. Listen again. When I was born, my father was 71 years old and my mother was 23 years old. That's how you must look at the African culture and look at the white culture in Swansea and understand that we are not the same. You have to accept that we are not the same, and it's not out of my creation, because already I am a child from a marriage which can be impossible, which can be deemed as impossible here in Swansea. A 71-year-old, imagine a 71-year-old getting married to a 23-year-old girl here in Swansea. Imagine that. Those are the disparities between white culture and black culture, which Swansea civilized institutions should learn before ever touching a black man's family. If you want to get things correct, you have to go back to 1969 and arrest my father for marrying my 23-year-old mother and getting me born in 1969. And I am not even the last born of my father's children. The last born was born in 1973. Actually, it was me in 1969, my sister in 1970, and my little brother in 1973. You can calculate for yourself that my father was 75 years old in 1973 when the last born in my family was born. We are human, very human. I was born by a 71-year-old man and I'm a human being. That's why I'm speaking to you. I am a human being. That's African culture, which sustained us for millions and millions of years. So it is unfair for someone to come around and say to me that their race or their culture is more superior than mine. Having been born by parents like that, a 71-year-old father and a 23-year-old mother, I was raised and entusioned by their way of life and the environment in Africa. And again, I was born under colonialism. As you understand, in 1975, I was born under colonialism, which had been instituted in 1888 in the Berlin Conference, which saw Cecil John Rhodes having to invade Zimbabwe in 1882. In 1892, let me say. So when Cecil John Rhodes came to Zimbabwe, he found us in our millions in Zimbabwe. In our millions, we had family structures which were functioning and sustaining us. We did not need to go to Europe. We did not need European intuition. We did not need European education. We did not need European civilization in order to be alive. We had already sustained ourselves for hundreds of millions of years or trillions, depending on when the Big Bang happened. Everybody is here on planet Earth because they survived all the difficult times of their genealogical history, which is why I'm standing here also. So, cultural differences have to be understood. Swansea is an educated city. That's why I got my degree in Swansea. They have psychologists who understand that every human being on earth is educated or intuitioned by his environment. I was educated and intuitioned by African environment. When I was born, as I told you, it was time to fight colonialism. Colonialism in Rhodesia, where I was born, was a system where black meant that you are less than human. You had to respect a white man, and a white man's decision had to be final. Unfortunately, this is exactly what is happening in Swansea. You could not argue with a white man in Rhodesia. You could not argue with a decision that has been made by a white man in Rhodesia in 1969 when I was born under colonialism. Being a black man, you could not argue with the decision made by a white man. Here in Swansea, a civilized country where the law does not accept that. This is exactly what is happening. I cannot argue with a decision made by a white institution. Right now, I cannot go around and ask my children to be brought back to me because they were taken illegally. That illegality was done by white institutions which are run by white men, and nobody has ever asked me a question of why my culture is different from the culture of everybody else. Because the law does not have that window. It is straightforward. The law does not care whether you were intuitioned by African teachings or you were intuitioned by Western teachings. It says level for everyone. When you land at the airport from Africa, it means the law expects you to by the moment you land in Heathrow, it means the law expects you to get evolved and become white. Think like a white man, talk like a white man, do things like a white man. Everything you do has got to be done exactly like what everybody does in this country. Everybody who was born here and then tuitioned here. All the values and beliefs of Africa should cease, those which informed me. Although psychology says the environment under which I grew up in Africa informs my psyche. Right now, as I am talking, a lot of people, well, when I talk to people in this country, most people move away a little bit because a lot of people do think that he's schizophrenic, he's violent, he's dangerous, he's probably on drugs. There's something wrong with him. When I talk like this in Rockford, Shurugwi, where I was born, where I should be had it not been for colonialization, everybody would look at me like a reasonable citizen. If I handled my wife and my children and spoke to them and brought them up the way I do here in Swansea, I would be respected. In Rockford, Shurugwi, where I was born, where I would have been had it not been for colonization. It's colonialism which brought me here. Trying to survive under a very difficult, illegal situation that was created for me before I was born. I did not choose the Berlin Conference of 1888. I did not choose it. I was born under it. It is a difficult thing to explain, but I will explain that my children have been seized because a group of white women told my partner that the way I run my family as an African is not allowed here in Swansea because I refused. I want you to understand this good thing very well. I refused to go to one of the Facing the Challenge meetings with my wife when she was wearing certain clothes which I was brought up to believe that someone who is a parent can wear them. I did not fight my partner. I just told her that I would take her and drop her there. Next time she dresses well, I would go with her because we are going as parents. We're not going later, we're going as parents. You see, if you're a parent, you have to be a parent. You have to respect the very virtue that you have got children, you brought up children, and that is has to be respected. There is a way of dressing, virtuous dressing. I was brought up in a Christian family. I'm a son of a pastor of a certain church. So there is a way of dressing, and my partner also comes from a family which has that church. They go to that church. She knows exactly everything. She's the only one in that panel who understood why I had a problem with her dressing. She understood it very well because we have spoken to it together, and we have spoken to it in church. We have actually met groups in church 10 years ago, not let me say 8 years ago, actually 9 years ago. We made meetings in church describing dress, particularly dress, because we're Christian. And my partner did not have a problem with that. She understands us. But this time around, when she was being advised by Facing the Challenge that if she raised the issue of dress, and she would get rid of me, and she would get more child support money and a bigger house and more benefits without me, and that had to be used against me in order to divide this family, because I refused to go with my partner to a Facing the Challenge meeting when she was wearing a dress that I did not see as a dress that should be worn by someone attending parent meetings, an African attending parent meetings. I didn't have a problem with that when it was worn. We were going for all other things. I wouldn't mind. I would go with her. We've gone to university. She was wearing that. We went to university together for 3 years. She was wearing all those things. No problem. I didn't have a problem with it. I do accept it, but only on particular places, when we are going to church, or when we are going to parent meetings, or when we have to represent children, do I say, no, I don't want you to put something that is a bit virtuous. It's written in the Bible. Sorry, I said already that I'm Christian, and I did not stop her. That should be understood very well. I did not stop her from wearing, because on that day I took her to the meeting and I dropped her. I just refused to go with her. If I had violently told her to remove those clothes, then it would have been violent control, aggressive control. But I did not. I just refused to go with her. It was when she came back from that meeting and she started the row asking me why I refused to go with her. And I told her, no, you see, you know how you should be wearing when you are going to meetings like this. And she became angry. Angry again because there was another problem where she had said something about somebody electromagnetically controlling our child who is autistic using electronics. She believed that somebody was controlling. I have to stop here and I'll start again. Thank you.